p.m. on June 24th, 2021, and I would like to call this meeting of the Human Relations Commission to order. In the interest of public health and safety and pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, members of the Human Relations Commission and staff are participating in this meeting by teleconference. In accordance with the Executive Order, the public may view this meeting online, but not in City Hall, Building A, at 276 4th Avenue, Chula Vista. The city launched a virtual commenting portal, e-comment, that allows residents to comment and participate in the meeting from their own homes. You can find the link to e-comment at www.chulavistaca.gov/virtual meetings. Your comments must be received before I call for the close of the commenting period in order to be considered. After the commenting period is closed, I will announce a brief pause to allow the commissioners time to read any comments that have been received. If you have difficulty or need assistance with the comment during the meeting, please call 619-409-5927 and Human Resources staff will assist you. Will the secretary please call the roll?
All right. Chair Martinez Montes, she'll be in a little bit later. Vice Chair Branch.
Present.
Commissioner Baber.
Present.
Commissioner Felix is absent. Commissioner Godinez. Commissioner Gutierrez.
Present.
Commissioner Kinayub.
Present.
Commissioner Lake.
Present.
Commissioner Medina.
Present.
And Commissioner Ratner.
Present.
Thank you.
So the first order of business is the consent calendar. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on items on the consent calendar. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
The 2-minute timer is not showing, but I'm keeping track of it. I'll let you know when the 2 minutes are up. All right, 2 minutes are up. You're muted, Commissioner Branch.
The commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read any submitted comments? Would the secretary please announce for the record the number of comments received in favor and opposed to this item?
There were no comments received.
Thank you. Do any commissioners wish to pull an item for discussion or question or questions? Let's see, I don't see anybody. Okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner Gutierrez?
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple questions. On the agenda before for the roll call, we should show present and then absent. And if there was nobody else, they would say none. That's not on the agenda anymore. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I checked with the clerk's office with regards to the format. And they said that the new format that they want us to use is this one. That it's fine. I don't know. I sent you an email as well separately. Okay, yeah.
But I was at the placement of the roll call last month.
Mhm.
Now I'm talking about the contents of the roll call. There is no absent on, I mean, this month we have people absent. So there will be an absent, but before, if there was nobody absent, it would say none. Just so we were clear as to, because our commission hasn't been the full commission for a long time. So we don't know if 10 is full or 9 is full. Okay, that's my concern. And then also for the votes, before, we used to have a yes, no, and abstain for the votes. Now it's just yes, it seems like.
Yeah,
Like 3.1.
yeah, I'll check with them again, but I think it says yes only because everyone said yes, and whenever someone abstains or says no, then it'll reflect differently.
Okay, that is a different format than we're used to.
Yeah, for sure.
And then for 6.2, for the discussion, wasn't the action for that item for the ad hoc committee to meet and report back to the commission?
I have to double check. I don't think there was an actual action taken. I don't remember actually asking for a vote, but I can go back and double check.
That's all for those. And then for the special meeting, we had 10 people present for the meeting, but 9 people voted.
Yeah, it looks like Commissioner Baber left at a
But I
certain
mean, so,
time.
so you have to go through and count everybody to make sure what happened there. Like I said before, we used to have absent for the votes if they were present for the meeting.
Yeah, perfect. We'll take a look at that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I make a motion to approve the minutes for the May 27th regular meeting and May 27th special meeting.
So your motion is to approve the consent calendar then?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a second for approval of the consent calendar?
Second.
See, I have a motion by Commissioner Gutierrez and a second by, I missed who was the second,
Baber.
With-
Baber.
Commissioner Baber. Would the secretary please conduct the roll call vote?
Chair Martinez Montes, Vice Chair Branch,
Aye.
Commissioner Baber,
Aye.
Commissioner Godinez. I think I saw him in here now. Aye. Perfect. Commissioner Gutierrez,
Aye.
Commissioner Kinayub,
Aye.
Commissioner Lake,
Aye.
Commissioner Medina,
Aye.
and Commissioner Ratner.
Aye.
Thank you.
So the consent calendar passes. We'll move on to item 1. Sorry, for a second. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. This point, yeah. Okay, now it's time for public comment. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the items before the commission deliberation. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure any new comments appear.
It looks like it's actually,
Did I skip something?
yeah, it looks like we're on 4.1. Public comment would be after that.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
So presentations.
Okay,
Oh.
I see where I am. Okay,
Well, Madam
next item-
Chair, go ahead.
yes. So, the next item on the agenda is item 4.1, know your rights. Is that where is that where it should be now?
Yes.
Okay, the next item.
And I will go ahead and get started. Well, my name is
Okay.
Simon, so I'm a deputy city attorney. I have with me two additional people that are going to present on Know Your Rights, Carlos Ruan and Captain Eric Thunberg, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. This is kind of a initial tryout of what this training would look like, because I know we want to get it to you folks, and then we want to be able to take it to a different locations such as Southwestern College and tailor it to their needs. So this is just kind of a brief introduction into know your rights and initial discussions. I think a lot of it will probably end up being in the questions section. There'll be a little bit more interaction there. So I'll ask Carlos Ruan to introduce himself first to let you know who he is and his background.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Carlos Ruan. I'm an attorney here in Chula Vista. I practice strictly criminal defense. Primarily, I do federal criminal cases, but I've done everything from juvenile court, state court, to federal court. And my office is located here in Chula Vista. I'm right across the street from the Chula Vista Courthouse.
Then Captain Thunberg, can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Absolutely, thank you. First, Chief Kennedy sends her regrets. She is out of town at a California Chiefs event. Otherwise, she would have been here. So you're stuck with me. I think I know most of you. My name's Eric Thunberg. I'm the investigative captain at the police department. I've been there for a little over 28 years.
And then I'll introduce myself because I know you folks know me as the lawyer for the sharing it with Glenn as the Human Relations Commission attorney and other boards and commissions, and a city attorney here, deputy city attorney for City Chula Vista. But before I became a lawyer here in Chula Vista, I was actually a prosecutor and on law enforcement for half my career. I was a reserve sheriff's deputy in Santa Barbara County. I worked Isla Vista Foot Patrol with the UCPD, Street Patrol in Goleta, Mountain Patrol with the Los Padres National Forest. I worked in the jails. So I got a good amount of experience working as a police officer, a sheriff's deputy. I became a prosecutor. I was a deputy attorney general in the criminal division in LA for about 4 years. I was there right after the LA riots during OJ was tried down the street. The Reginald Denny defendants were tried. The Menendez brothers was going on. So it was an active time in LA. I came down here to the city of San Diego and I was a deputy city attorney in the criminal division doing domestic violence prosecution for 4 years. And then I went up to civil and was a police legal advisor for SDPD, where I primarily advised Vice and their professional standards and internal affairs unit. And then since I've been here, I've been one of the attorneys that helps advise PD in particular, its internal affairs and PSU unit. So that's kind of my background. So that's why I'm doing this part of it. And so what we're going to do is let me start the PowerPoint that I have. Get that going real quick. So we've introduced ourselves. And so Know Your Rights, we're really going to focus on 3 different types of interactions with law enforcement. A contact in the street where a police officer comes up to you and talks to you, getting pulled over in a car, and then a contact in your house. We're going to talk to you about what legal basis the officers have to conduct what they're doing, your rights in terms of interacting with what they're able to do, and then some additional advice on how to do things. One thing, when I read the ACLU materials as well, they want to make sure that in asserting your rights.
Hey, Simon, sorry to interrupt you, but are you already sharing the screen or no? Because we don't see it.
Oh, I'm sharing the screen. Let me take it again.
It worked earlier.
Yeah, we tried it. Share. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, we're good to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Up again. The contacts, when you contact on the street, getting pulled over, a contact in your house. In asserting your rights, the ACLU recommends to be calm, don't run, resist, or obstruct officers, don't lie or give false documents, keep hands where police can see them. You want to make sure that the interaction is calm between both parties, between you as the person that's being contacted and the law enforcement officer as well. The rights that you have are based on the Constitution. The two main ones that you deal with with your interactions with the police are the Fourth Amendment, which ensures that you are free from unreasonable searches and seizures, and there's a probable cause requirement for any warrant that's issued. In terms of the Fourth Amendment, there really are 4 types of contacts that occur, whether it's in the street, it's in your car, at your home. It's a consensual encounter. We'll talk about that term. Reasonable suspicion. It says suspension, but it should be suspicion, or articulable suspicion, AS, that justifies the detention, but not to an arrest yet. And then probable cause, which is authority to arrest somebody once an officer has probable cause. The other right you have is the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. However, the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent was expanded upon or explained in Miranda, which basically says you have the right to remain silent and to an attorney if you're in a custodial interrogation. And whether you're in custody or not for purposes of this is quite a legal discussion. But generally, you're considered in custody if a person would generally feel that they're not free to leave, and it's very fact specific. Not every contact with the police officer that you have and they're asking you questions necessitates a Miranda warning, but that's an area that gets taken up in courts all the time. So a consensual encounter. This is kind of you're out in the street. You're sitting there at a bus stop just waiting, and a police officer comes up to you. A police officer to talk to you and nothing more doesn't need any type of suspicion or probable cause. The police may contact anyone at any time for any reason to talk with them. And really, what it really is consensual. It's that you two are talking and having a conversation. It doesn't require anything else in terms of what they're able to. But since they don't have articulable suspicion or probable cause, what they can do is limited. So I'd ask Carlos, in terms of that type of interaction, what rights do you have?
I would kind of narrow it down to just 3 main things, and I think this would probably apply to each situation that you have. You have the right to remain silent, and you have the right to have an attorney present if you're going to be interrogated, and you have a right to say no to a search. And generally, that's what I would tell my clients is, exercise your right to remain silent, exercise your right not to have your vehicle, your house, or your person searched, and also exercise your right to have an attorney present if you're going to be interrogated. In terms of the right of just having an officer approach you, you have the right to ask them if you're free to leave. You have the right to say, I don't want to make any statements. You have the right to do that. So those are some of the things that kind of like your starting points.
Yeah. And one thing is a consensual encounter could be the start of a overall interaction with law enforcement, and as they're talking to you, they can develop articulable suspicion. And Chief, what kind of scenario would that be, or Captain?
Well, I got called a doctor at the last virtual meeting I was at, and now Chief. So I think that's two so far. These are all good points. I'm sorry, Simone, can you rephrase the question? You distracted me.
In a consensual encounter, it could start off as that, but can it turn into a detention or more during that encounter?
Yeah, good question. The answer is yes. Simone mentioned you're sitting at a bus stop and an officer approaches you, and I think what Mr. Rowan said, those are all important things to remember. So an officer could just come up to talk to you because he's in the area and he's just reaching out to you as a community member, or because maybe there's been some crimes occurring in the area, and then maybe there's an extra patrol. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons why an officer might be in the area. mainly for visible presence or anything like that. So if he's talking to you, if the officer is talking to you and they notice, let's say as they're talking to you, they notice they notice a handgun in your waistband, you're wearing a jacket, and they see the butt of a gun. That could turn into a detention because normally most people aren't carrying guns. It could be they recognize symptoms of maybe being under the influence of a controlled substance, under the influence of drugs. And if they have the ability and the knowledge to articulate that, they could use that to articulate turning that into a detention. Or quite honestly, if maybe you're intoxicated in public and they don't know that, and as they're talking to you, you start to exhibit those symptoms, that could also turn into a detention. So it depends on what they're able to articulate as they speak with you. But as Mr. Rowan said, you should be able to say, well, am I being detained, or am I free to leave? And the answer, they should answer you, yes, if you are, or no, you're being detained. And then why am I being detained? And then that should lead to more awareness of what's going on.
And then the other thing is again, it could start off as a consensual encounter, and you decide to stay. You ask them, am I free to leave? And they say yes, and they walk away. Then the interaction is pretty much over. I know when I was a deputy, I spoke with somebody. I asked them if I could see their ID, and they gave me their ID. I was looking at it, and the person said, am I being detained? And I said, no. And the person said, am I free to go? And the answer was yes. And I gave him back his ID, and he left. So these interactions do happen. And if you don't want to talk to the police in this scenario, you don't have to. Some do, people do. A lot of people consent to stuff. You'd be surprised how much people actually consent to things that you ask. So don't be afraid, but do it respectfully and politely. That way it doesn't turn into an aggressive action.
And Simone, that was, I think I want to add to that also. One of the things that I always advise my clients or anybody that asks me is, if you are going to exercise your rights, always do it politely, always do it respectfully. Even if you say you don't give consent to search, you say, no, you can't search my car, you can't search my house, you can't search me. If the officer is going to insist upon it, then you're going to cooperate, and then we'll deal with it later. But at the moment, you don't become aggressive, you don't start escalating the situation when it's going to get worse for you.
Now, a detention is when they do contact you and you are not free to leave. The officer has to have articulable suspicion to detain you, and what that means is reasonable suspicion or articulable suspicion exists if there are some concrete facts that a reasonable person would have considered suspicious to unspecified degree. So they have to have some facts that would lead them to believe that you're engaged in some form of criminal conduct, but they just don't reach the level that, yeah, for sure you did it. But it's really a point where they're contacting you and are investigating things. And one thing about the investigation and the contact, it can only be long enough to complete the investigation. It can't be an unlimited contact till they exhaust everything about you. If they think you're there for drugs or something like that, it has to be only that amount of time that it takes to investigate for drugs. If it were in a car, generally it's the amount of time for them to give you a ticket for whatever speeding offense. So it's not an unlimited amount of time. They have to do it, fairly diligently and reasonably quick. So again, it's a reasonable standard of how long it is. But if they have articulable suspicion, they have a belief that you may have committed a crime, they can conduct an investigation. They can ask you for identification. In addition, if they think that you may be armed, whether it's a handgun, a knife, a billy club, or some type of weapon, they're able to do what's called a Terry frisk. And that's really a cursory pat down of your outside of your clothes, looking, to see if there's any weapons where they're likely to be, and when they do this, they have to have an articulable basis to do so. So they can't have a policy where I search everybody I stop. If they're going to search you, they would have to, in their report, or testify as to why they felt you were armed. And it has to be some pretty specific facts. one of the things I've been seeing in the motions to suppress and things like that, both in state court and the Ninth Circuit, which is relevant, is that they really do want facts. They want less speculation in terms of what you think they're doing. So it's the standard is starting to be high on that. So it's the start of the contact. They could do a little bit more and investigate the case. Carlos, in terms of the rights, are they still generally the same in terms of talking to them and consent?
Yeah, I would say it's still the same, kind of across the board. Those are your rights, your basic rights that you should be applying.
Okay. And Captain, in terms of Terry Frisk, how often do you guys do them, and what's the main basis for, what's a typical justification for it?
I don't have numbers on how often they're done. I will tell you that, what you said about, well, I search everybody. I'll be honest with you, that doesn't wash, right? That's the same as I write everybody a ticket that you stop. That doesn't wash either, right? So ask the questions, but at the same time, recognize that, let's say it's a hot summer day, and it's 100 degrees outside, and the officer sees you walking around with a bulky jacket, and maybe as you're talking to them, they see you got your hands, maybe you're wearing a hoodie or a sweatshirt that has that pocket in front. They see a bulge in there, your hand is in there, and maybe they can articulate, like, I don't know what's going on, but it's outside what is maybe normal. That could be considered enough to do a stop. It could be based upon a crime that they're investigating. Let's say that they're investigating, a fight that occurred, or something like maybe a stabbing, and they should be able to articulate that the person that they're talking to maybe matches the description of one of the individuals involved, and they're nearby. Like if you're investigating something on Broadway and you're stopping somebody on Hilltop, 5 minutes later, probably not going to wash. But there's got to be something that you can point to and say, I believe that this was the person that was described in the event that we're investigating, or based upon the person's behavior and their actions, I believe them to be armed and or to have a weapon on them. And you've got to be able to articulate that in a way that makes sense beyond I search everybody and that type of thing. And these situations there's so many of them, it's hard to kind of describe all of them, but that would kind of be the in a nutshell. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And what I might add, just and it's going to kind of odd, or I guess coming from a defense side, but when if you are the person being stopped, that's not the point to argue whether or not the officer is correct or not in his actions or her actions. Basically, you still have to be compliant, whether it's, in the end they can't articulate it or they can't. You still have to comply for your own safety, the officer's safety, and just kind of not escalating the situation.
Can I add another aspect to this?
Yeah.
So I would agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Ruan. Understand too, at least in Chula Vista, our officers are wearing body cameras, so they are supposed to be on. So if they're walking up to you on a consensual contact based on the discussion we just had, or to initiate a detention, that camera should be on. Now, they malfunction from time to time, and there's a 30-second window, but that camera should be on. So if you disagree, if you say, well, and you're cooperative and you're polite and say, well, and the officer usually will ask for consent. They'll ask for consent. And if you choose to say no, and they then say, well, I'm detaining you and or I believe you to have a weapon, you still may, as respectfully say, well, you can ask them a question that will be memorialized. And if the officer is, if you end up in court down the road, that's all there. That all becomes part of the case. If the officer has the legal standing to do what he or she is doing, then so be it. But if, and Mr. Ruan, you feel free to chime in on this, but if you want to ask the question and do it respectfully, it's on videotape, it's on the body worn camera, ask it. And if the officer can't say it, then, then shame on the officer for not having a solid footing. That's really the nuts and bolts of it, right? We need to be doing our jobs and doing it properly. Nothing prevents you from asking the question and the officer answering or providing a response.
Now, in this detention, say you have a bag, and the officer, doesn't have a basis to say that you're armed. He can't articulate it, so he doesn't do a Terry frisk. Can the officer search the bag, Carlos?
You know, sadly, the officer at that point in time could do whatever he wants or she wants. But later on, when you go to court, then we look at it and see whether or not his or her articulation was correct, and then we argue it in court and with what's called a suppression motion. But sadly, at the moment, they can do whatever they want. You know, and you just have to save it for later. The good thing is, as Captain Thunberg said, is now we have body cams, so that makes a huge difference now. It makes a difference for the prosecution because they have that evidence, and sometimes it makes a difference for us in that we could see whether or not our client's telling the truth or if it happened the way they said, or whether or not the officer is misstating the facts or something. We could look at that. So I agree. Those body cams are great.
Yeah. The next thing is the officer has conducted his investigation and he's reached the point where he has probable cause to arrest you. So at that point, they're going to put the handcuffs on you. They're going to search you before they put you in the vehicle, looking for weapons or any contraband that you may have. They're also able to search, your person, obviously, like I just said, but they're also able to search the area where you were arrested, incident to the arrest. So at that point, they'd be looking to search the bags that you have in terms of what's going on. So you have to remember that initially it starts off with the detention, and they have to have more facts to be able to start a search. And usually it's at the arrest stage where they're going to have greater ability to do a search. Before that, it's really going to rely on consent. So you can refuse to be searched. And the other thing that I've seen is officers will ask over and over if they can search. They'll ask you initially as it's going on. They'll go, "Well, you sure you don't want me to look to make sure you don't have anything?" And so you do have to say it repeatedly and things like that. If you don't want them to search, it's your right to do that. You also don't have to answer their questions if you don't want to do that as well. But once you're arrested, they can incident to an arrest. They can search the area around you. You can go to jail, or they can issue a citation and release you to appear in court. Again, like we've said, is always be asking if you're free to go. It's not a bad thing. If they say you're free to leave, it's your option to leave. Decline to make statements if you don't want to, and don't consent to search, because officers let them exercise the other means that they have available that they have to justify. The other thing is, what if you're a companion to this person, Carlos? If you're there with your friend and he's getting stopped, they're leaning on him, but you're just there. What can that person do?
I think you would ask the same question. The first thing would be is, am I free to leave? Am I being detained? And then if you're not, then get away from the situation. I've had passengers where they're the ones that end up getting in trouble because they didn't ask those questions, and they did, things fall upon them. So they would have the exact same question, the exact same right. The only right they don't have is, as a passenger, they can't say no to searching the car, but they could say no to searching the backpack that belongs to them, or the purse.
Well, so unless the car is theirs, I mean, if I'm the passenger in the car and the car is mine,
correct.
I have standing to say, no, you can't search my car. I happen to not be driving it.
Right.
So understand that. And then if I could chime in as well, it also is really important to ask, number one, not all arrests have handcuffs involved, right? Sometimes in the field, especially now with COVID, a lot of our arrests are non-detention, they're non-custodial. They're still arrests. Miranda still applies. A lot of things still apply, but they are de facto arrests, even though maybe handcuffs aren't applied. Maybe the officer says, "Hey, you're under arrest. I'm going to pat you down real quick," and then they're going to take care of whatever paperwork it is. Maybe you're being issued a citation for a misdemeanor of some sort, and you may never be handcuffed because it works out. You're cooperative, and the officer feels low risk, and there's no issue. But it pays to ask, just if you, and not every person that is handcuffed is placed under arrest. Sometimes it's a detention for safety reasons, and the officer feels or has a justification to use handcuffs to keep you from, and you're detained, but you're not under arrest. And so it's good to say, am I under arrest? If you're not sure, ask it, because then that would trigger, if you're under arrest, then you would know, as Mr. Rowan said, the officer starts asking you, like, certainly what, your name and everything else. That Miranda doesn't apply to that. But all of a sudden, if they're saying, what's in your pocket? Where are you coming from? Where were you 20 minutes ago? And they're interrogating you as to your actions that are pertaining to a crime. You would have Miranda rights at that point. So knowing your standing is huge and should always be asked. And that's great if it's on camera, again, because it's hard to argue with. He asked me, am I under arrest? And I said, yes, or no.
Yeah. And then one thing about Miranda it consists of two rights. One is the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. One of the reasons you might want to not make a statement then is one, you're in a stressful situation. You don't have the complete information of what they're looking for, and you may just need a break to calm yourself and give the best set of facts and not misremember things or say things incorrectly, and have the aid of an attorney to walk you through it. So ultimately, if you do want to make a statement, you could do it with the help of an attorney. So in terms of this issue, the consensual, the contact out in the field, it could start off with the consensual encounter, where there is no basis to detain you, but they can talk to anybody they want. A lot of times it happens if you have a foot patrol in particular areas where you want to contact the community and talk to them. I know when I worked with the UCPD on foot patrol with the college kids, I talked to them all the time, especially since I wasn't much older than they were at UCSB. So and it's good to talk to people. For a police officer, you learn how to talk to people. That's a skill that's acquired over time. It seems kind of weird when you're new. You don't often talk as much as you should to the people it takes a while to be a good person to talk to the community and feel comfortable doing it. So it's a good skill to have. But it could start off as a consensual encounter. They could gather facts to make it a detention or an arrest. But you do have rights. And both like Captain Thunberg and Mr. Ron said, it's about being polite. It's about asking, and especially with the Barney Moore camera, it's recorded. So we know exactly what you were told and things like that.
Yeah, the other thing
Yeah.
I just want to add was, when you talk about the reason for not making a statement, is a big part of it is you might say something incorrect, or you might say it to the point where it would be misinterpreted or be taken as an admission where it's not what you wanted. The other reason, this is from the defense side, is I want my client to have as little statements as possible on the record. I want the officer to have as many statements as possible on the record, because then I could impeach them. But for the client, I don't want anything to be misinterpreted, and I don't want, basically, I don't want I want my client the ability to fix the story also when we present it in court.
And both sides do that, because I know as a former prosecutor, when we get a statement, we corroborate or not corroborate everything they say. And literally during cross-examination, if they choose to testify, I have their statement broken down pretty much sentence by sentence to be able to do a cross-exam on it and build my case in a cross like that. So, and the other side does the same thing for my witnesses or for their witnesses as well. The next thing is your rights in an auto stop. This one is usually for a traffic related violation. So it's not usually a consensual encounter. They can happen. That's usually where you're parked on the side of a street, you're sitting there and the door's open and you're talking to a group of people or friends and things like that, and the police officers come up to you. And that's really like a regular consensual encounter, detention, arrest kind of scenario if it goes that way, and the same rules apply there. But if it's a traffic stop, they pull you over the red lights and the officer gets out and contacts you. They can ask you for your identification, registration, and insurance. You're required to have those. You can ask why you were stopped. One thing I've noticed is traffic officers will ask you, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And that's not a winning question, because I always find it hard to be able to say in a way that doesn't incriminate me. Because if you say no, then you weren't paying attention, and if you say yes, you just admitted to something. So it's a hard question. You could come up with some middle ground, but it'll always come off as bad. Well, you pulled me over, you tell me.
That's
Respectfully. Yeah, that starts off a bad relationship. But you should ask, and they may ask you first. And so they detain you. They investigate the violation, get your ID, registration, and insurance. They tell you why you were stopped. And then there's certain points that they can search you. Say it turns into it used to be, but these I don't think are custody offenses anymore. But having a suspended driver's license or a suspended driver's license with priors, they don't do that anymore. Yeah, they used to. But say it's some form of felony, because they'll usually take you in for a felony. In terms of being able to search your vehicle, the number one allowable reason is consent. They'll ask you, can we search your car? A lot of times we used to have forms where they actually signed the consent. I don't know if they do that now, especially with body worn cameras, since it could be recorded. So they can search you if you consent, obviously. Another way they can search you is if they have probable cause. In your vehicle, they do not need a warrant to search your car. Case law has held that because the car is mobile and could be taken away, all the officers need is probable cause to search the vehicle. And again, it's that strong suspicion that you've engaged in a crime. So if they think there's a weapon in there or drugs, things like that, they'll search you. So for example, they stop you, it turns into a drug DUI potentially. They're gonna search the car looking for drugs. And so they're only searching in areas where drugs are likely to be found, which is pretty much everywhere in the car. They can also do a search incident to an arrest. Again, searching the area. If they don't have probable cause to search the whole car, they can do that limited search in the area where you're seated, incident to the arrest. The other way they can do a search, which really isn't an investigatory search, is an inventory search if your car is searched. In order to do an inventory search, the department has to have a written policy that the officer is aware of, and they conduct a search in accordance with that. And what they're really doing in that type of search is they're making sure that there isn't anything valuable that could get stolen in the car. And usually it used to be a CHP 180 form that would get filled out when you're towing a car. I don't know how often they tow cars. It used to be, for example, on a 4000A, an expired registration, it takes 6 months of the car being unregistered before it would be towed. I still think that's the state of law. So a lot of times it'll be searched. You know, under what scenarios, Captain, would you folks impound a vehicle?
It could be a variety of things. So if the vehicle is evidence, and we're going to seize it for evidence purposes, then we will take it and tow it. As you described, expired registration is certainly one reason. The person could be unlicensed or suspended. Could be, there's any number of reasons the car would be towed after a traffic stop. Most of the time, at least in Chula Vista, we make absent evidence where we have an evidentiary need to take the car or something like that. We're going to make an effort to find a licensed driver to come get the car to avoid towing the car. So if you're the driver and your license is suspended, we may say you can park it and leave it. It depends on the officer. That's an option if it's parked safely. If it's on the side of the, some place where it can't be left safely, then chances are that's not an option. But most of the time, the officers should make an effort to park it safely if they can. Now, if it's not an area or you go, please don't leave my car here, it will disappear overnight. Then we'll make an effort to not have it towed. But, you know, if it's legally able to be towed because of a suspension of your license, or you don't have one, or it's evidentiary, then it could get towed.
And Carlos, what type of rights would you expect in an auto stop in terms of the interaction with the police officer?
You know, I mean, you still have, again, the same ones, you know, the right against an unreasonable search and seizure, the right against being stopped, unless they have a reason to do it. And so it's kind of like it's consistent. You still have the same rights. Usually from my, you know, the officer has to justify the stop, and then he has to justify taking you out of the car. He has to justify taking you, arresting you. So there's different points where they have to justify it. I did want to kind of comment on the consent and kind of like a different perspective, because what happens a lot of times is you have a uniformed officer, an experienced uniformed officer that knows how to ask questions, knows how to try to elicit some kind of a response from the person, and then you have someone that has maybe never been stopped before, or they don't have the experience with the officer, or they're just intimidated because the officer has that area of authority with them. And then the officer says, "Will you consent to search my car?" But the officer forcefully says it. You know, I want to search your car. Will you let me? And so they feel compelled to say yes a lot of times. And so that's kind of like something that somebody has to always remember, that um, many times some officers will be very forceful. Um, I had an officer a long time ago raise a flashlight over my head, not to light me up, but just to kind of show me that he had a big baton, and told me he wanted to search my car. And I kind of felt like I didn't have much of an option there. Um, that was when I was much younger, by the way. Um, but you do want to always remember you have the right to say no. I've seen so many people. I mean, I've been doing this for 28 years. I've seen so many people that have had their cars loaded with drugs, loaded with guns, loaded with contraband, and the officer says, "Can I search your car?" And guess what they say? "Yes, I have nothing to hide." Is that right, Captain?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, people have that need to cooperate, and even if it's going to be against their best interest. As a general rule, I just say don't. Just say no.
Can I add something really quick to this?
Go ahead.
So one of the things I would agree. I mean, I don't want I don't want my officers. I know Chief Kennedy doesn't want her officers. You know, and those of you that have met me in person know that I'm large, and so I always made it a point to try to be polite and respectful when talking to people, because depending on how I approach somebody, they could very well feel compelled to cooperate. And so I don't want an officer out there making people fearful of not complying. And so that's the good question. It's hard because it's in the moment. You're not expecting to be stopped. Your mind is elsewhere, going home, doing whatever, and all of a sudden now there's this officer, you know, in all of this gear with all this stuff on their belts and everything, and it's an authoritative incident. An officer walking up to you, absent like you called them and you know they're coming. That's a when I get stopped every once in a while. Even though I've been in the business, it's not a comfortable feeling. It's not, and so asking or saying no, or do I have a choice? You know, so can I search your car? Well, do I have a choice? Or, you know, do I have an option? And, you know, and if you have that, if you get to the point where you feel like this isn't right, you can always in Chula Vista, and you should do this elsewhere, but I'm only speaking for Chula Vista. Can I get a supervisor? Is there a supervisor available to talk to? Ask for a supervisor. Do it politely, do it respectfully, but ask for a supervisor. We'll send a supervisor to the scene. And if it's something's not quite kosher there, it never hurts it. And, you know, and we got a lot of newer officers, and some of the officers, like Simone said, they're not as comfortable, you know, they haven't learned how to talk to people. And we want to make sure they're doing things the right way for the right reasons. And so you can always ask and say no, or ask your standing. But if you don't like it, you can always say, you know what, is there a supervisor that could come here? And that answer should never be no, should never be no. And if it is, There's a recourse for that I'm sure Simone is going to get to in a little bit, but you should always be able to talk to somebody to get a supervisor on scene if you're feeling it's just not quite right.
Okay. The next type of auto stop, which is kind of common, is a DUI. And so again, like Carlos said on DUI, the officer has to justify the stop, justify the interaction and the investigation and ultimate arrest. In terms of a DUI, what advice would you give, Carlos?
Thanks, Simone. That's actually one of my favorite subjects. There's a couple of things with DUIs that a lot of people don't know. One of them, and I think a very, very important one. First, you have the same rights. You have the right to remain silent, right? Well, at that point, you don't have right to an attorney, but you have the right to remain silent. So I still say exercise that right. If the officer asks you, how many drinks have you had? Well, of course, instead of giving the customer, everybody says number 2. Everybody says 2, but instead of giving an answer, you just say, I'd rather not, I'm not going to answer that question. When was the last time you drank? I'm not going to answer that question. I kindly, politely, I'm not going to answer that question. Then there's one other question that they're going to ask you is they're going to start doing what I call field sobriety tests. And they might ask you to say, step outside and I'm going to ask you to do some tests to make sure you're not drunk. Well, people don't know this, but you have the right to say no to that. You could say, no, I'm not going to do the field sobriety test, and, politely say no. And at that point, the officer has to make a decision where he's going to arrest you based on the information he or she has already. But by doing the field sobriety test, you're giving, this is in my opinion, but I think the officer already has a strong suspicion you're drunk. And so you're just confirming that suspicion for the officer. So the best thing to do is say, no, I'm not going to take that test. And then there's another one, there's what's called the chemical test. You have an obligation as a driver, as a licensed driver, to do the chemical test at the police station. The breath test, the blood test. Usually those are done at the police station. There's one called the the alcohol sensor 4, a preliminary test that an officer, it's a handheld machine. I actually have it right here. And they got one of these things right here. They put a mouthpiece in it and they tell you to blow into it. And that'll give the officer a reading right there on the spot of what your blood alcohol roughly is. My advice is don't do that test either, with the exception of if you're on probation for a DUI and you're under 21, then you do have to do that test. But if you've never been stopped for a DUI, you don't have to do that test.
Okay.
And
yeah, a lot of the questions that are asked in the DUI investigation are really designed to see whether you have a rising BA or not. Because the questions they ask of how much you drank, when you drank, and then coupled with the test, they're able to tell whether or not you're, because at the time of driving, say you go at the test and you take it there and it's like an 08 when they go take it to you. Your blood alcohol is either going up, which means when they stopped you, it was low, which it wasn't an 08, or you were coming down, which means it was higher than 08 when they stopped you. So that's really what the questions are looking to answer. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, and ultimately you have to make the decision. But you need to remember, if you're going to decline to do these things, do it respectfully, politely, but you do have to take the test at the station, because under California state law, driving is a privilege and you're required to take it at the police station. If you refuse, then the police department will get a warrant, and they could do a forced blood draw and get the blood sample if necessary that way. And Carlos can correct me, if you refuse and they do a forced blood draw after a warrant, is that considered a refusal?
it's considered a refusal and you can lose your license for a year.
Yeah, and so you need to kind of remember that. And then the other thing is after the test and you're arrested, they're going to give you a whole bunch of paperwork. One of them is a temporary license, and you have to request a hearing within a certain time period. Usually
10 days.
it's 10 days or less. Is it 10 days?
10 days.
Yeah, 10 days. And you have to request the hearing, or else the license will be, you won't get a chance to appeal it to get your license back, or at least get a restricted license that's there.
The other thing, Simone, is you have to take the test at the police station, but some agencies and some officers actually have the intoxilizer inside the trunk of their car. And if they have that, then you have to take it there. Usually downtown they have that.
Chula Vista doesn't have that.
Okay, good. Chula Vista say no.
Okay, and then the other thing, do you have a choice? Because I know you get the breath test. Can you take a blood test?
You can take a blood or breath. My recommendation is you take the breath, because there's more on the defense side, there's more things we could attack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to prosecute DUIs. The tons of stuff to come up. So interesting. Okay.
And just, you can win DUIs. So just because you get a DUI doesn't mean you're going to lose it.
Okay. Captain, anything on DUIs?
No, that pretty much hits it. Obviously, I think in this day and age, you'd have to be silly to be drinking and driving. I would say that, keep in mind too, if you know you haven't had anything to drink, we have instances. So if you're diabetic, for instance, there are some medical conditions that can cause some symptomology. And so there is the potential, and this is an individual judgment call, but if you know that you are suffering or you have that condition that can present itself as potentially a DUI, and you get an officer that may not be aware of that, sometimes it can behoove you to take the test or do something like that, because it might prove that you're not, and it gives you that option. But that's an individual case, and again, that would be up to you. But that might actually save you from it might get you medical help immediately if you're that bad, depending on your driving. But it might also help go towards eliminating the suspicion that you're driving drunk. And so knowing that, but that's a judgment call, and that's an individual decision, but it's just food for thought for people.
Yeah, and then the other thing is prior to taking the formal intoxilizer test, can you talk to an attorney? Carlos?
If you asking me, or are you asking Mr. Juan?
Either one.
So my answer may differ, and which is possible. I could be wrong, but if the officer is not interrogating you, I don't believe you have the right to consult with an attorney before submitting to a chemical test based upon the driving, the requirements, the implied consent. If the officer is interrogating you and asking you questions after you've been handcuffed, driven to the station, while you're being driven to the station, and you're under arrest, then you can request. They should be Mirandizing you, and you can request an attorney at that point. Am I correct in that, sir?
Yeah, I would agree. The only thing I would say is at whatever point that if you're being interrogated and you say, I don't want to speak without my attorney, then at that point, the officer should not ask you any incriminating questions from then on. That's my opinion. But I agree that no, you can't say, can I talk to my attorney to see what test I should take? You're not going to get that. And even if you say, can I talk to my attorney before you interrogate me? You're not going to get that, because you might not even have an attorney by then. So the benefit you have is just that they can no longer interrogate you.
Yeah, realistically, from what I remember, it's the rare case that you would get an attorney on the night you're arrested. Realistically, you're going to get your attorney if you get charged at arraignment, maybe beforehand, if you hire a private attorney. But realistically, for most stuff, they're just going to stop asking you questions as opposed to getting you an attorney. If it's a more serious case, obviously, it'll turn into something like that. But most cases, you're not going to get it. And there's another distinction. If an officer asks you, you say, I don't want to make a statement, I don't want to incriminate myself, that's one component. The officers could come back and ask you, do you want to talk to us now at a different stage? And you could say yes or no. But if you tell them that I want an attorney, that really does stop it. It means you can't come back later and start saying, well, I know you want an attorney, but do you want to waive one now and talk to us anyway? That runs into a little bit more problems in terms of being able to defend it.
I would echo that a lot of the concerns, and this is full disclosure and honesty, right? If you're vague, well, I wonder if I should call an attorney. And there's a lot of discussions like that. It should be unequivocal. I would like to talk to an attorney, or I am not going to talk without an attorney, or I don't want to talk, period. And that's it. Once you mention attorney, the officer that should be their key to go, okay. But be sure about it. Be definitive about it. Don't and we're talking about DUIs here, so it's a little bit interesting just because you may not have the mental wherewithal based upon your intoxication level. But don't leave it up there. Well, I wonder if I should, because the courts have ruled sometimes that's not necessarily the assertion of wanting an attorney, and it can go both ways.
I agree. You have to be direct, and you can't even say, I want to talk to my mom, I want to talk to my parents. That's not going to do it either. It has to be specifically, I want my attorney present.
Yeah. Well, there is one other right, which is for minors. Minors also get to consult their parents in addition to a lawyer. Minors are completely different in terms of how you arrest somebody, and usually we try not to take them into custody. Sometimes you have to, but it's a completely different interaction in terms of after you've determined they committed a crime, how you're gonna end the case, whether it's a ticket or things like that.
And there are some actual new laws that have come out fairly recently that require that you cannot interrogate a juvenile, I believe 17. It was 15 or younger. Now I believe it's 17 or younger, without consulting an attorney. So our officers or detectives essentially have to call a defense attorney. And I have yet to see a defense attorney go, no, go ahead and talk to him. It doesn't happen. And so the officers can't, once you're under arrest, they can't interrogate or ask questions without checking with an attorney first.
I actually have seen that, yeah.
The last area, which is know your rights, the police come to your house. Usually it's a call for service, whether it's loud noise, they hear yelling, things like that. They come to your doorway. You don't have to let the officers into your home. The only way they come in is if you consent, which is true for any type of search. They also have the ability to enter without a warrant if there's an exigency, meaning that there's some danger to somebody that they could articulate. Somebody's in a back room and you hear them screaming. The call is regarding, they heard children screaming. They're going to check on the welfare of the children, but they only go in to check on the exigency and make sure people are okay. It doesn't let them to have carte blanche to search the residence after that. The other ways is the police can get a warrant, and I don't think it's hard to get a warrant. It's just if you're able to write a report, you're able to get a warrant, and you just have to be able to explain it. And then warrants usually get reviewed by the prosecuting agency, and so you can get a warrant if you need it. Again, when the police come to your house, you don't have to consent. You could literally just keep the door open. And the thing about just keeping this door slightly open and you're talking, that does create kind of a dynamic where it's potential. It seems confrontational from the law enforcement side, because you're thinking, what are they hiding? Why aren't they doing it? So it does raise issues like that. But you don't have to consent. If they get a warrant, they have to show it to you, and you don't have to make any statements. And then the exigency, if they have to go in to protect human life, then the courts are gonna go their way a lot of times. But they have to be fairly specific, and it can't be a general type of statement. And so in the cases I read, the courts really wanted a detail, that's specific detail, not kind of speculation or guessing. It's really, this is what I heard, this is what I saw, this is the information I had going there. So you have to be able to explain it well. in terms of the police coming to your home.
And Simon,
Carlos?
the basic concept is your home is your castle. So that kind of, you have that more of a right to protect your castle. And so that's where a lot of that comes from, is like, you could say no, they can't just walk in there. A new case just came down a couple of days ago where before it was, I think it was a California case, but where an officer followed somebody in for a misdemeanor into his garage. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. You can't do it for a minor or simple infraction or a misdemeanor case. Only if it has to be a true exigent circumstance to go into the house.
Yeah, I think that was out of Modesto or somewhere around there in Central California. 100% accurate, right?
Yeah. Again, you don't have to consent. They must show you a warrant if they obtain one. You don't have to make statements. What if you don't live there, but you're a guest when the police come? What can you do if you're a guest?
Not much. You could tell them no, but if they want to go in, they go in.
Yeah. Can you leave?
If they let you.
So these are good questions, but they're hard. These discussions end up having, these are actually fairly complex, and they get discussed quite a bit because of the legal aspects of it. Generally speaking, you could say, can I leave? This isn't my house. And depending on the circumstances, maybe they let you. Most of the time we're going to go to a house. Domestic violence is unfortunately one of the calls we go to most often. We're going to go in, generally speaking. We have a reason to go in. We're going to go in and make sure and determine if there's a crime in that regards, right? And that seems to be the most common one. But Simone's also right. It's not that it's not difficult to get a warrant, but it requires a level of proof. And I worked as a detective for many years. You have to consult with the DA's office, and I've been working cases where we consult, and the question is, do I have enough? Do I have enough legal sufficiency? And and the DA will say, yep, you do. Let's get it to a judge. And the judge will go, okay. And a couple times the judge has said, nope, I think you don't have enough, you need more. Come back when you think you have more. So there's discussion. So it doesn't always happen just because it takes work, and you got to do your homework and your legwork to do it. So it's not as easy as just going and getting a warrant. It does take work, and you gotta make sure you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you got to have a solid grasp of the facts that are more than speculation.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes good investigative work, a lot of corroboration to any statement or information you get. So it's a lot. There's certain types of warrants that people kind of surprise them. For example, if there's a homicide in a residence, you have to get a warrant, even though there's a dead body there, and clearly a homicide has occurred. And so you get a warrant for that. That's not an exigency. And then the other type of warrant is, for example, if they believe a suspect is staying at their friend's house, you have to get a warrant to go into the friend's house to arrest that one person that you're looking for. So there's different types of warrants, whether it's a Mincy warrant, which is the homicide warrant, or the Stiegel, which I think is the friend house warrant. And these are very complex issues that get litigated in terms of whether there's enough for a warrant and whether there's an exigency.
And if your house is searched pursuant to a warrant, there absolutely should be. They will give you a copy of the warrant. They bring it with you. We bring multiple copies. We'll give you a copy of the warrant, and then anything that we take is we are required to leave a receipt. And so if we take 10 things of evidence that we consider to be evidence, we will leave you an itemized list that says we took these 10 things, and you'll get a copy of it signed. It'll be signed. But sometimes, like you said, sometimes the officers won't need a warrant, and it's okay to ask. Never hurts to ask, but it can get awkward.
Yeah, and again, what I always tell my clients or anybody is if the officer insists on going in there, don't put up a fight, don't argue with them, just step aside. Make it clear that they're going in without your permission, but step aside.
Yeah,
same-
and there is a process. It's a motion to suppress a 1538.5 motion. Now I'll tell you, in the gap between me passing the bar and becoming a prosecutor, I did some defense work, and I worked on a motion to suppress. A SWAT team served a warrant. Well, actually, they went in. They didn't have a warrant. They went in, because of an exigency. It was a kidnapping case, so there was an exigency to go in to rescue the hostage. After they rescued the hostage, they searched the house. And in the house, they found all sorts of drugs and other stuff, and it all got suppressed because the exigency ended when the warrant, when they rescued the kidnapped victim. So these do get litigated, and prosecutors do lose them. So you have to be able to justify it and take each step in terms of what's going on. Okay. Talk about DUI. Home. No, you're right. Towards the end, recording. I just want you to know that it is acceptable and protected under the First Amendment to record the police when they're performing their duties. You could record them as whether you're the subject of the police activity or a witness. But you also have to remember, if you're holding something in your hand, cops don't always know what it is. So you need to make sure it's obvious that you have a phone in your hand and that you're recording. Same thing if you're doing it as a witness. The one thing about recording is you can't interfere with the police activity, so you have to keep a reasonable distance, which means, if they're rendering aid or handcuffing somebody, you can't be standing right on the officers recording it, because at that point you could be involved, whether the person pushes the officers away and having to push you away. You need to keep a reasonable distance and be obvious that you're recording. The police can't take it, and they're not going to delete it, and because they can't. It violates the Fourth Amendment if they do so. So you do have the ability to record, and you also have to remember that there's body-worn camera in addition to your recording as well.
They may ask if they can have a copy of the footage. That's especially depending on the circumstance. They may say, "Is there any way you'd share the footage?" They may ask. That's your call to do. It's up to you to share it or not. But Simone is right. Can't seize it.
Yeah, and so if you think your rights were violated, like Carlos said, is ultimately be respectful, polite, assert your rights professionally, for want of a better description. But ultimately, you should comply because there's remedies. So what ends up happening is make a record of the scene. So if you can record, write a summary of what happened afterwards, get the officers' names and badge numbers, get witness name and information, take photos. During, when you get home, if you go to a medical doctor, get examined if you have those level of injuries, and then take photos, a couple of days after the incident, because bruises take a while to come up, so they don't always come up right away. You can always file a complaint with the police department, and then you could also get an attorney to advise you on your remedies, in terms of what goes on. So make a record. And so that pretty much is it. So we covered, the contact out in the street, that could be a consensual encounter and work its way up or start at a different level, in your car, in terms of what they can and can't do, and then at your home. One question at home, if the police arrive at your house, say it's a loud party call or some other type of call, do you tell the subject who called in the complaint, Chief or Captain? I'm promoting you.
I appreciate that. No, we don't in most cases. And so we do our best when those calls come out to recognize these are neighborhoods. Someone's usually frustrated. Someone's having a good time. Someone's trying to sleep. We can't have our rights disturbed. So police officers have no standing to say your party is too loud. So we're not going to, if I'm driving through your neighborhood, I'm not going to stop of my own accord and say, your party's too loud, you have to shut it down, or you're disturbing the peace. My peace can't be disturbed. However, if your neighbor or neighbors call and they call us, we're going to go out there, we're going to talk to them, and we're going to find out what's going on. And our first step is going to be the lowest level, like it should always be, is, okay, we're going to knock on the door and say, hey, we've got some complaints about the noise. Would you guys mind turning it down? Recognizing that sometimes these come in at 5 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon in July, which is okay. But a lot of times they come in late at night and people are trying to sleep. And we get compliance, and then we ask the person that called, are you willing to, essentially they have the opportunity to say, I want to place the person, my neighbor, under citizen's arrest for disturbing my peace, in which case we won't be saying that your neighbor at 123 Elm Street across the street is the one that called. But if it came to that and it ever went to court, you would then know that your neighbor across the street is the one that called on you. And that seems like a recipe for some discord in the neighborhood. I'll be honest with you, in my 28 years, and I haven't been on the street in a while, but I worked overnights. I don't think I ever did a citizen's arrest for disturbing the peace. Usually we worked it out. We don't say who called because of the reasons I just discussed. It creates discord and causes more problems than it's worth. And we're very cognizant of people in a neighborhood having to get along with each other.
Carlos?
Just a comment with a citizen's arrest, reminded me that when it's a misdemeanor and it does not occur in the officer's presence, you can't be arrested, or you shouldn't be arrested. It's only a misdemeanor occurs in the presence where you are, with the exception of a DUI. But go ahead, officer.
And and domestic violence as well. There's a couple of exceptions.
And domestic violence.
Yeah, and a lot of these issues, if you get charged, get worked out in the criminal justice system, because you have the ability to challenge evidence that you think was unlawfully seized. You have the opportunity to suppress statements if they were in violation of Miranda. There's a whole litany of things, rights that the defense asserts. As the case goes forward, they're entitled to discovery, which means anything the police has that support the case, the criminal defense attorney will get. It's both the prosecutors and the police department's obligation to provide discovery, especially if it's exculpatory. And exculpatory is pretty broad, which includes even materials that could lead to impeachable evidence. It doesn't necessarily mean it's like a picture of him not being there. It's very broad, and it's a serious obligation of the prosecutor, and it occurs all the time. The obligation doesn't end. So if you get something new, you have to turn it over right away. They have timelines for the initial batch of discovery, but once it's coming in, you're turning it over as soon as possible. So then that last part is, are there any questions from any of the commissioners? And I will get out of the sharing.
Commissioner Godinez?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank you all for the presentation. It was wonderful. I just had just a couple questions. Do the folks can they ask the officer to have, if his body camera is turned on, and to have them turn it on, let him or her turn it on?
Yeah, there are a few things you can't ask an officer to do if you want to ask them, and you should. So if you want to say, are you recording me, or is your body camera on? The answer, if it's a detention, the answer, or excuse me, if it's got any potential whatsoever for leading to enforcement, the answer should be yes. That's our policy. If you anticipate enforcement action. Now, if you're in line at 7-Eleven getting coffee and the officer walks in and you guys strike up a conversation, and you still ask the same question. Hey, is your camera on? No, it's not on, because I don't anticipate taking enforcement. I'm getting a cup of coffee. But you can always ask that question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And is there any distinguishing indicators that the camera's on? Is there like a LED or something, a light?
Yeah, there's a light on it, and I don't want to tell you the wrong thing because I don't wear one, and it's been a while since I did, so I can't recall if it's red or green. But there's usually a light on it and it's there because the officers. It's supposed to trigger the officer. But I can find out for you, but off the top of my head, I can't tell you what color it is. I want to say it's green.
Thank you. And then now, noticing there's a lot of folks living in RVs on the roads. Are the search, as far as the searching the vehicles, is it the same, basically the same laws as just a standard vehicle for an RV and a trailer, let's say?
Kinda. It's hard to say. So if you're driving down the road in an RV, that's a vehicle, and technically it's movable and it's fleeting is the term the law uses, right? It can be driven away and moved. So it depends on the circumstances, but at the same time, if that's what you're living in, and we're wanting to search, and it's a residence, then it's kind of a fine point of the law. So the answer, I guess, is it could be considered your home, and it could be considered a vehicle based upon the circumstances.
Okay, and then, okay, so yes, for Mr. Ruan, if it is considered their home, would they require a search warrant?
They would still require a search warrant or if they had probable cause, they'd have to articulate it.
Okay.
So they'd have to have a valid reason to go in there. It could, like the officer says, it could be a heightened standard because it's considered home.
Great.
And it depends on where it's at. I mean, if it's if it's in a park, it might not be a home, but if it's somewhere more permanent, it could be.
And that ascribes to like folks that are homeless, right? Their tent, their belongings, things like that. That the same principles apply in those cases as well. And that's not the burden would be on law enforcement, on the officers to follow the rule of law.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for your wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Commissioner Lake?
Thank you. My understanding of listening to this presentation is that we were kind of screening what we would potentially endorse as the Human Relations Commission, and also present to the general public. Is that right?
No, it's not an endorsement. We just wanted your input in terms of going down the line, what subjects you want us to address in more detail.
Okay, because my initial, I'm a lawyer. This was pretty sophisticated, I believe. And so if I was going to present something to the general public, I believe something along the lines of, I participated in a street law clinic in law school, and we had a lot of really dynamic, concrete examples. And I felt a little nervous, I'll be honest, a little nervous with off the top or off the cuff examples, especially if the Human Relations Commission name was associated with the presentation. I'd want to make sure the examples were super concrete and very rooted in case law, California case law, or some other type of specific example rather than just based on personal histories. So that made me pretty nervous. I would also really think that our goal, I'm speaking for myself, but I think I'm speaking for some of the group. One of the goals I had in thinking about these Know Your Rights is really what you ended with, which was, tell me all the things that I can do to protect myself when I come into an encounter, before you tell me everything that the police can do to me and do with or without my consent, right? And so for me, I think that the last slide where it had all of the, take the badge, because I wrote down here, where's the information about the badge number? Where's the information about the body cam? That's what I'm thinking the whole time. You lost me in the middle. I got really overwhelmed with so much information. And all I really wanted to know is, but what about me? what do I get? How do I protect myself? And I think, you know, again, if we're talking about a presentation for the community, leading with these are officers' expectations that you will know, that a supervisor is always available, that, you know, all these things. I don't know. I think that's really big. I also really, really liked, Mr. Ruan, that you said the officers can do what they want. Let's be honest. I think that that's a really powerful statement for our community to hear. And then I think following up with the place to fight that is in court is also a nice end cap to that conversation. So that's my feedback. And I think, again, I'm not sure that's exactly what you want, but from my perspective, if we were going to go forward with any kind of Know Your Rights presentation with HRC backing, I'd want the information up front so that people feel comforted in knowing before they get told what they can't do, here's what you can do. So.
Okay, that makes sense. We could change the order around, and then we could come up with like one scenario per, you know, something for a vehicle stop, a home search, and things like that. With one scenario that we can just explain what the issues are there. And
again, rooted in case law. I mean, I just think that,
yeah, we would find a case for each one.
And you know, I'm gonna kind of add, typically when I get a client or someone comes in that they've been arrested, they've had that experience, they usually come in and they'll tell me, you know what, we have a great case because the officer didn't Mirandize me. He started asking me questions, and you know, he violated my rights. And then, but the reality is they hear a lot of stuff on TV, on CSI, where they think they know the law, but they don't. You know, sometimes I got to tell them, well, no, even though he didn't Mirandize you before he arrested you, that doesn't matter. It's after you got arrested whether or not you got Mirandized. So kind of, you know, you still kind of give a little bit of what the law and what the rights, and maybe a clarification of what your rights are, what the rules are, because a lot of people go in there thinking, you know, I don't have to let anybody into my house. I don't have to, and you know, I don't, you know, you have to honor every single one of my rights, and sometimes there's exceptions. So it's good to have a basic understanding.
Yeah, less legalistic though. Well, we could make it a simpler explanation with concrete examples based on cases that are out there.
Do any other commissioners have any comments or questions?
I see a hand up.
Let's see. Did I miss somebody? Commissioner Keen, are you?
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually twofold. I wanted to mirror what Sue brought in points. So my concerns was the consistent going back to always comply, make sure you're calm. My concern with that is often brought up in terms of police shootings, in terms of police contacts, that the person didn't act correctly or was not calm, and that's justification for the escalation. So my understanding is there's 2 hours requirement every 2 years for police officers in de-escalation tactics and trainings. The city of Chula Vista has already stated that they triple that, so that's 6 hours, which still doesn't constitute 8 hours of de-escalation training for 2 years, 2 years worth. So my concern is that we are utilizing terms with the public like remain calm, make sure that the police are not upset by your presence, make sure that you do not upset the police, which leads into the factor of the problem that a lot of communities have with the police. One of the questions I have specifically for you, Captain Thunberg, is based on ARGIS numbers for your police department, do you have exact numbers for how many brown and black people you contact on just a contact basis, not necessarily a misdemeanor or arrest, just a contact basis in the city of Chula Vista as compared to white or east side Chula Vistans?
I guess the best answer I can give you is I don't know, because I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if we have that. And I will tell you that effective in January, we start complying with RIPA. We'll be doing RIPA data collection. So we'll be having that. That will probably be the best source of that. But I don't know if we have it in Argus, to be honest with you. I just haven't delved into that to know. And then so I don't have a good answer, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add one thing just on a separate thing? The language about calm that I put in the front of the PowerPoint, that actually came from the ACLU. It's on their materials. And, you know, I did wrestle with that issue because, you know, it's kind of just telling people, yeah, you may get treated poorly. You may have your rights denied and you don't have a way to express yourself in a way that lets people know that this isn't right. And I did wrestle with that issue. So maybe it's something that as we move forward on this, we talk to the ACLU and see how they address it and figure out how to reword it to address that issue in terms of what that is.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. I understand the point of you don't want to just let an officer do whatever he wants to do and let him get away with it. You know, if they're doing something wrong, you want to point it out. But the point I was making in being calm as well is, one, you know, you articulate what your rights and your positions. You articulate it to the officer, but you try to do it in a way where it's also not going to escalate it. It's not going to cause the officer to escalate the situation, because if it does, you as the person being stopped are most likely going to be on the losing end of that. I've had the experience where an officer has pulled a gun out at me for a parking ticket. You know, I know, you know, even now, if I've always known I have to put my hands on the steering wheel when I get stopped, just because of the way I look. And when I was younger, I looked like like a young cholo. So, you know, I always had to be careful with that. What I did learn over the years is there's a way to, one, I'll give an example of getting a parking ticket. What I've learned now is, back in my younger days, I would have got smart with the officer. I would have started telling him what I knew. I would have shown him how smart I was and how smarter than him. And that would have really, and not really, it has, it made things worse. I got the ticket. Now, the approach I take is I don't even tell the officer I'm a lawyer. I don't tell him what I do. I become as unmemorable as possible, because when it comes time to fight that ticket, he's not going to remember me, and I'm going to have a better chance of winning it. Yes, you do have to protest. You do have to stand up. You have to say, hey, something's wrong. But when you're in that situation, my advice is always let me do the fighting for you instead of you doing it there at that point where things might get worse.
I appreciate that viewpoint,
Yeah.
Mr. Ruan. That leads me to my question for you, which is how many can you estimate of your cases were dropped by people that complied with the police? Would you say it's over 50%?
Dropped for complying with the police. I would
Dropped
say that
complied with the police. So those who complied, would you say over 50% their case was dropped?
no, and I think it's kind of the wrong standard. The compliance, my recommendation for compliance is for your safety and for you not to make matters worse. That's where the compliance with. Now, my recommendation is don't make a statement, don't let them search your car, don't give consent. That is going to make my job easier to win the case. Doesn't guarantee I'm going to win the case, but it makes there's less things I have to fight about. Example is DUI. You don't do a field sobriety test. I already got one less thing to fight about. So the compliance doesn't equal having your case dropped. If an officer believes you're guilty or that you've committed a crime, they're going to arrest you. And the reality is sometimes you did do something wrong or they did do something wrong. If you're innocent, it'll come out. It does come out. So when I can show early on that my client is is innocent or justified in what they did, yes, I do get those dropped. And it is kind of like there's a different standard also. I'm not looking to see whether my client is innocent or guilty. I'm looking to see whether or not they can prove that my client is guilty. That's what I'm looking for, and whether or not they got that evidence. So I can't give you a number like by complying does it get dropped. That does not save you from being arrested. What it does is saves you from getting hurt.
Thank you.
Are there any other commissioner comments or questions? I don't see any right now, so let's stop for public comment. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the item before commission deliberation. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
Again, the timer won't show, but I'm keeping track of it. I'll let you know when the 2 minutes are up.
Okay.
2 minutes are up.
Madam
Okay, the
Chair,
commenting,
I was just going to
yes.
add one last final thing is I appreciate the feedback. We'll come back and I'll make some edits to this and get it to you folks, and we could work on the issues that you've identified, particularly hypotheticals that are case specific, starting with the note your rights first, and then working on what type of language to address Commissioner Tina Yube's comments in terms of what it means to advise not to to kind of to not say anything other than to assert your right quietly or professionally. So we can go from there and work on something. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I
The
just want
commenting,
to, just real quick, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you guys.
the commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read any submitted comments? Will the secretary please announce for the record the number of comments received?
Yeah, there were 0 comments received.
Thank you. I just want to add that I thought that the presentation was very informative, and it's the kind of information that we were looking to have people have when we started talking about having a Know Your Rights forum. So anyway, I wanted to thank Attorney Silva for putting this together. All right, before we move, are there any other comments, questions, anything else on this item?
I have one, Commissioner Branch.
Okay.
Just a question of clarification. To my understanding, there's an ad hoc or a subcommittee that's really supporting the work of this Know Your Rights. And so I'm just wondering what happened or what's happening with that process and how or why it's become whole group versus work within the ad hoc and subcommittee, and then bringing it forward to the entire group. It just seems like it's I don't know. So just a little bit of clarification on the process of this and why we as a whole group versus an ad hoc is now the approach.
It was just a
Hello?
test.
Oh,
It was a test run, and the ad hoc committee hasn't met in a while in part because of COVID. And then also part of the ad hoc was to identify a forum to do it. So we just we wanted to put it on to the full committee. That way it moves forward and we get reset.
and I guess I just want to say, as was just mentioned, the subcommittee, I guess essentially got a little bit stalled because of the COVID situation. And so I'm thinking that the subcommittee needs to sort of meet again and decide how it wants to move forward. But it's my understanding that this presentation tonight was an attempt to start getting that information out there and get a sense of what a possible presentation might look like for the public. Theoretically, this could also, having presentations like this at our meeting could also possibly replace having a special event. But that's what the subcommittee and the commission has to decide how they want to move forward with this type of information. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on how we move forward with presenting this information to the public?
Well, I mean, not to belabor this, but I just feel like I want to respect the process and respect the ad hoc and respect that group and their original commitment. And I'd like to see the work of the ad hoc come back together and to formalize this and then make a recommendation to the entire group. So if there's a way to do that and to backtrack a little bit and go towards the ad hoc and have the ad hoc create to have dialogue and conversation about what the content of that presentation should look like and how it should look. That's something that I just would like to see happen.
Does anybody else, like on the ad hoc, have any thoughts about that?
I agree with Commissioner Medina. As part of the ad hoc committee, I believe that we should reconvene and decide how we want to present this to the public.
Well, with that said, I will contact the ad hoc and organize a meeting, and then we'll get back to the full commission about what is determined in that meeting. Checking to see if anyone else has any comments on this before we move on. Okay, let's see. At this point, it's time for public comment. So public comments is the section of the agenda for members of the public to address the board on items that are not listed on the agenda. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final public comments. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
Again, I'll let you know when the 2 minutes are up.
All right, thank you.
Mhm. 2 minutes are up.
The commenting period for public comments is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to review any submitted comments? And will the secretary please announce for the record the number of comments received?
There were 0 comments received.
Okay, let's go to the next item on the agenda is item 6.1, discussion regarding fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 annual reports of activities and authorizing the chair to work with staff to finalize and submit. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, hi, Ann Steinberger. I have a brief presentation. So I know we keep talking about the pandemic, but it really has affected a lot of our work and our efforts. But one of the things we want to get caught up on are the annual reports that go to the council about the work and activities of the various commissions. You know, we have 20 plus commissions. And this year we would like to have you take an action to authorize the chair to work with staff to finalize the annual reports and submit those to the city clerk's office. We start with our secretary. So Felipe has been pulling together the information from the 2020 and the 2021 meetings. And we would like I said, to have the chair work with us to review the information, make any suggested changes, and then it's submitted to the city clerks. Apologize, I don't know the deadline. Felipe, do you know the deadline we need to get this submitted?
Unfortunately, no. The clerk's office said since this is an action item, it gives us some leeway, but they didn't give me a specific deadline.
I believe it's wrapping up the fiscal year, so it's likely July or later. So if the commissioners would like to ask any questions or consider this item, we'd like to hear your input on this.
Commissioner Kinayu?
So are these the items we discussed in the previous meeting, the things that we agreed to participate in?
No, these are all of the activities of the commissioners. There'll be one for 2020 and one for 2021, all of the activities under the HRC during that time frame. They do this, we do this for the other commissions as well. So what has Planning Commission done? What is, Charter Review Commission, Sustainability Commission, et cetera.
Thanks, Sam.
Any other questions before we go into public comment?
I think I saw Mr. Medina's hand.
Yeah, one of the concerns I have is maybe we should add also our vice chair as well to that list. And because I know that just with busy schedules and whatnot, maybe having both of them to be accessible for this report, I think would be helpful. And in addition, what I'd also like to do is what I'd also like to see is, a lot of times that these reports, they contain a lot of the strengths and a lot of the, I would say, the highlights, what we want to share out. But I think equally important is that we share the complexities. And we share as well some of the public comment that has spoken out around what are the challenges that the community has brought to the HRC during this time. Challenges that are related to communication, challenges that were related to the Columbus statute, challenges that were related to ALPR. And so I just think that I don't know if it would be the best way to capture that would be numbers and how much public comment we have. But like I said, I just feel that it's important for us to capture not just activities that we're involved in, but the public comment that's coming to our spaces and what they're sharing, because I find that to be also equally important.
So I have a clarifying question. So would the chair or the chair and the vice chair work on this report and then would come back to the commission for approval and then be submitted? Or is there not enough time for that?
It's from the item here, it's to work with staff to finalize the report. and submit it.
Okay, so it wouldn't come back. Does anybody else have any questions before we go to public comment? Okay, so we'll take, I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the item before commission deliberation. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
I'll let you know when the 2 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Time is up.
The commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read any submitted comments? Would the secretary please announce for the record the number of comments received in favor and opposed to the item?
There were no comments received or emails for this item.
Thank you.
Excuse
But-
me, Chair. I wanted to let you know that Margaret Baker was unable to submit an e-comment under public comments and sent us an email that we will forward to commissioners. It was about the issue of submitting public comments in a virtual setting.
Okay. So on this item, I believe at this point, we would need a motion to allow the chair or the chair and the vice chair to work with staff to finalize that report and submit it.
I make the motion.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Kina Yu. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Actually, let me clarify. I said chair or vice chair. The item on the agenda was for the chair, so I wanted to just be clear on what the motion is. Commissioner Kina Yu, what's your motion? Could you state it?
Or the chair or the vice chair.
Okay. Okay, and then I'm sorry, was there a second? Did I miss that?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, a second by Commissioner Godinez. Is there any further discussion?
Is there a way that we can offer some kind of Is there a way that we can offer some kind of, because I want to support this motion, but I do think that it's critical that the chair or vice chair consider the content, any kind of suggestions that come from any of the commissioners. So does that need to be put into the motion, or is that something, Anne, that you think is just more, it's simply an email to a chair or co-chair, or is it something that we should add into the agenda, into the motion regarding the process of this report?
I would, well, maybe I'd look to Simone. I did write those notes down, Commissioner Medina, and we would provide, and the vice chair is here, but if that's, well, Simone, I would say if the commission wants that to provide the direction, would we want it in the motion? So that's, Simone, are
Well, a couple of things. If you want to provide feedback, it has to be in a public meeting, because we can't be sending a quorum conversation to the chair telling her what you would like in it. So if you're gonna, but if you want right now to give some highlights of what you'd like to see, it should be done now. And so the motion should be amended to say that to include the following items, that in addition to regular items. One of them, of course, is the issues that were raised by the community, not necessarily acted upon or an agenda item, but issues that were raised by the community. Which I think hopefully that's what Commissioner Medina was looking for. And you could put a little bit more substance to it. For example, the community raised issues in terms of the license plate reader, and had concerns about privacy in this issue. Just a little paragraph blurb, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to see that happen, right? I would like to see that happen in that report. And the three issues that I'm speaking specifically to would be the license plate reader, would also be just the ongoing continued work. And I'm assuming the Columbus statute would be in there just because it was an action item and it did move forward into a resolution. It was approved. So assuming that would already be there. But some of them that didn't lead to necessarily resolutions or actions. And so I do think ALPR is one. And I also think that the public comment that's specific to public communication during this time of pandemic, I think has also been one that I've continued to read about. And I think it needs to be documented in the content of that report.
Certainly have made note of those things. Does anybody else want to have any input about what should be in the
I have a
report?
question.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yes, when I was looking at this, there's the annual report and the minority reports. Do we have to do minority report to get those issues across? Because it says, in addition to the annual report, a board of commission may make other reports to the city council. Minority reports, if any, shall be submitted in writing concurrent with the majority report. So are we talking two separate reports or just one annual report?
It's the annual report of activities. So it's only one item.
Right, but in the, whatever this is, the 2.25.280, where it says other reports, because what Mr. Commissioner Medina is talking about is not all the accomplishments and stuff we're still working on and stuff that hampered our ability to work on stuff. It's not necessarily accomplishments, which is what the annual report is supposed to highlight.
If you want to create another report, you'd have to agendize it and discuss it. But this is just really the activities, and they wanted to add as an activity community concerns.
Okay.
Any other input for the report? I see no other hands raised. Are we ready to vote then? Okay. Will the secretary call the roll?
All right. Chair Martinez Montes. I don't think she's here still. Vice Chair Branch.
Aye.
Commissioner Baber,
Aye.
Commissioner Felix is absent, Commissioner Godinez,
Aye.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Aye.
Commissioner Kinayub,
Aye.
Commissioner Lake,
Aye.
Commissioner Medina,
Aye.
and Commissioner Ratner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 6.2, commission discussion and recommendation for members of the Christopher Columbus Statue and Discovery Park Task Force. Does staff have a presentation?
We do not. This is your opportunity to discuss who your recommendations are from the HRC for participating on the task force.
I have
Mr. Medina?
yeah.
Oh, I was about to say, do you have anything to say on this item? I know you've been one of the leaders of it.
Yeah, I do have a question. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page for this. So the task force composition, from my understanding, is it consists, and I'm just going to name it, just Ann, so that we all are on the same page, and then we can have this discussion specifically about what is it. And I know it's in our agenda, but there are some elements specific to the task force that we're speaking on. So the entire task force is composed of 2 HRC, 2 Parks and Rec commissioners, 2 cultural arts commissioners, 2 Pumiai community members, an individual that is from the Italian American community. Specifically, we're looking to individuals was the sons and daughters of Italy. We are also looking at, now I'm going to look at the ones that are here, a scholar / historian. We're looking at somebody who is specific to like public monument scholar or public memory scholar. And then the last one is just a community member. So those are the ones. And so we don't have any kind of authority, right, to discuss, well, who's going to be from Parks and Rec or who's going to be from cultural arts. So the ones that we do have some capacity to make a recommendation are the ones that are bulleted. And so if that's the case, what I wanted to do is, I have a couple questions. I can make the recommendations of the names here, but I think maybe before I do any of that, Ann, am I on the right page with all this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do have some recommendations of individuals specifically that would fit the criteria of these bulleted. I could speak on the credentials. I could also speak on the rationale for these individuals. I'll start with the 2 from the HRC that have verbalized. I definitely want to continue the work with this Columbus statue. It's been something that it's been ongoing. And spent a lot of time just working with community, in collaboration with community around it. The other individual I want to say that has verbalized it to me has been our chair, Paula. And so I definitely am support and want to bring her name to this space as well. The individual, as far as the scholar, his name is Roberto Hernandez. He's from San Diego State University. He has articles and scholarly work that is specific to statues. And so he has also volunteered. He is a longtime South Bay San Diego resident, once again, very involved in community-based groups, and is a I want to say, I don't know his status, his full rank status as a professor. I want to say it's professor, but I'm not too sure. But he once again is at San Diego State University. And then the last one is one community member at large. There's a woman by the name of B Zamora. She is at one point in time, she's a retired counselor from Southwestern Community College. She has showed up to meetings and supports and has been in ongoing involvement with the Columbus statue And so she is from Chula Vista. She's born and raised, and I don't want to say born and raised, but she has raised a family here in Chula Vista, has been very involved here in Chula Vista, and has met with council members and met with the mayor regarding the statue. And so to me, it seems that she would be that community member that would fit that profile. And so if we are once again looking at these individuals, those are the ones that I'm coming to the table today that I feel would be assets, would be strongly suited to continue this work that is related to the Columbus Statute Resolution.
Do any other commissioners have any thoughts on the people to fill the various slots or the process for identifying the people, or? Do any other commissioners have an interest in being on the task force? Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yeah, if the chair can't make it, I'll volunteer also.
Okay, so you put your name out there as a possible member.
Yeah, if the chair can't make it, I can go in.
And then Commissioner Lake, I saw your name out. Are you interested in being on the task force?
No, I wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Medina. It's obvious that he put a lot of thought into the nominations, and I don't have any other suggestions, so I'm pleased. Thank you.
Let's see. Do any of the commissioners have any other clarifying questions before we go to public comment? Okay, so I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the item before commission deliberation. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
All right, time is up.
So the commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read any submitted comments? Would the secretary please announce for the record the number of comments received in favor and opposed to the item?
There were 0 comments received.
So we have a recommendation of names for the various slots. Is anyone prepared to make a motion right now?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue to fill the task force with the 2 members from the Human Relations Commission to be myself and Chair Paula, and with an alternate in case something was to happen to one of us, to be Commissioner Gutierrez. And then the other individuals would be, the scholar would be Roberto Hernandez from San Diego State University, and the community member would be Chula Vista resident B. Zamora, B-E-A, Zamora with a Z.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second Commissioner Lake.
Second by Commissioner Lake. Any further discussion? I don't see any hands. So then I'll call for the question. Would the secretary call the roll?
All right, Chair Martinez Montes, not here. Vice Chair Branch?
I think we need to do, did we already, we already did public comment, sorry.
Yeah, we're good.
Sorry.
Yes.
You're fine. Vice Chair Branch?
Aye.
Commissioner Baber?
Aye.
Commissioner Felix is absent. Commissioner Godinez?
Aye.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Aye.
Commissioner Keen Ayub?
Abstain.
Commissioner Lake?
Aye.
Commissioner Medina?
Aye.
And Commissioner Ratner?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And so we're at the part of the agenda for staff comments.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Branch. One of the items on here is the Welcoming City Quarterly Update, and I have one to share with you today. So since we did get some questions along the way, I guess, so start with the ALPR program where people reference how can we be a welcoming city and have the ALPR program. So I did have a conversation with a couple of members of the Welcoming America, our regional manager, George Savala and Melissa Bertolo, who we communicated with her on the phone. She was our lead contact for the Welcoming City certification process. I shared with them what had been happening in the city. I sent them the links to the news articles, the city council agenda items, and the steps that had been taken. And they reviewed those and got back to me and said that this would be the kind of information or issues that we would address as part of our recertification process that'll take place in 2022, and suggested that we should engage with George Safala, which we agree. We heard from him last year, and the commission said that, you know, it'd be good to connect with him periodically. So he is available to come in July to meet with us at the July meeting. So I would recommend we do that, to have a conversation with him. And I also have asked for, and I don't have it now, but asked for additional information on what the recertification process looks like. As you know, we were certified in December of 2019, and it's a 3-year certification. So I don't know the time frame of when you start the process. I do know that it's not as rigorous as the full-blown application process for the initial certification, but for recertification, you have to report back to them on the activities, et cetera. So that is my Welcoming City update. I'm happy to answer any questions. And if there's consensus from the group to have George come in July, I will confirm the invitation with him. You're on mute, Vice Chair Branch.
Any comments or questions on that item, or that report? Any thoughts on having that that person come to speak? With the-
This is Commissioner Lake. I agree. It would be a good idea.
Yeah, Commissioner Medina, I also can I speak, Commissioner Branch?
Yes, go ahead.
I also think it's a great idea. I think as well that Mr. Zavala would be, I think, to fully so it's a question for Anne. How much access do you think is necessary for us to provide Mr. Zavala with the amount of public challenge to ALPR so that he is, I'm assuming so that Zavala is prepared with the, just to know exactly everything that happened with ALPR. And so more so in that sense is it really specific to ALPR? And how do you see kind of that interchange of us having dialogue with Zavala about it? Is it, you know what I mean? So that's more my question for you, is just to make sure that the individual has ample information about what all that took place with ALPR.
Well, I did provide him, the article, the initial article that was written in the Union Tribune, and then some of the subsequent coverage, the staff reports that went to council, the action council took. So I did provide him all of that information. So he has that. And he said he's happy to come, talk with us about about this issue and any other issues that the commission might be interested in. So if you'd like to, if they're an ad hoc or if somebody, to make it productive, if anybody else would like to join me and Courtney in a meeting with Mr. Zavala to kind of lay out what the group wants to hear about, or if you want to give me a list of what you want to make sure he's aware of. And he's very accessible. I'm not going to speak for his time, but I mean, he's joined us. He can join us at whenever we need. He said he can come down and meet with us. So, when things open up and looks like we're getting close. So, this could just be the start of maybe, probably would just be the start as we move through the recertification process next year of him engaging with us.
Commissioner Medina?
Yeah, I don't think that an ad hoc is necessary. I just think the only thing, I think all of that you mentioned, Anne, is perfect. I think in as well, if there's ability to share public comment, I think would also be helpful, so that Mr. Zavala is very clear with just all that we've dealt with. But I feel confident with this process, and definitely am in favor of him coming in July.
Thank you.
Commissioner Godinez?
Yes, I agree with Ricardo. I would also like to see if possibly we can send them perhaps a copy of our meeting that we had with Chief Kennedy right after the story broke, and how Chula Vista PD had approached the HRC and participated in the meeting and gave us kind of an overview of what was going on with that system and what has been done to correct it, just so he can see how we interact. So just perhaps a copy of the meeting that we had.
Good idea. I can send him. I mean, there are pitfalls to virtual meetings, but now we're recording all of these, so I'll be able to share that with him. So yes, thank you.
Any other comments on that staff item? Okay, so I'll move to chair comments. And I just
actually, I had one more, Vice Chair Branch. I had one more staff comment. I just wanted to thank you, Vice Chair Branch, and Commissioner Keen Ayub for coming to the Juneteenth celebration last week. There were probably a couple dozen people there, Mayor Casillas Salas, Councilmember Galvez and Councilmember McCann, and then some business leaders, and Vice Chair Branch came and spoke about Juneteenth, and we raised the Juneteenth flag at City Hall. And there was discussion of doing something, bigger and better next year. And my recommendation was that we need to have a community, I know all of us here are on a zillion committees and have a zillion meetings, but it would be nice to engage a little bit with others on what that kind of celebration would look like. And not that it has to be too elaborate, but just something that we get some community input on, so that we have this celebration that the community would like to see as well. So I just wanted to say thanks again, Vice Chair Branch and Commissioner Keen-Ayub, for coming. Thank you for making those comments too.
Thank you. That was what the comments I was going to make were going to be about that event. So I'll just make them shorter, but basically I just want to thank the mayor and Councilmember Galvez and for hosting that event and organizing it. And it's very important that we recognize that day, basically, acknowledging that the end of slavery. It's one of the longest running African American holidays. So I appreciate the city hosting that event and raising the Juneteenth flag.
Thank you.
Right. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Keen-Ayub?
I actually have a couple comments. I do want to start off with I had an issue getting some things added to the agenda. I put one item about 20 days out and then another item about a week and a half out again. And according to the bylaws, which I did read, we are supposed to submit them through the committee and then vote on them. The problem with that is the HRC handles situations in real time. And a lot of times there are things that are going to come out and they need to be addressed within the 30-day notice. So we don't have the time to vote on them on one meeting and then come back on another meeting. So my concern or my hope was that we could change the way that things are done, since several messages were sent to Chair Powell without response, and perhaps get a vice chair addition on there for approval for the agenda, or have it be approved through the city officials that oversee, just so that we have a faster and more efficient way to, as commissioners, for our voice to be heard.
Simone, are you on the line?
I am. We can make an amendment to add a vice chair or somebody else to make the decisions for the commission when the chair isn't available. We could bring that back. However, in terms of staff making the decision, it's not our recommendation that staff be involved in those decisions, because some items there may be a majority that they want the item on the agenda, but then again, by the same token, there may not be a majority and they may not want it on the agenda. So it puts us in the position of being a decider for the commission. So the preference is to have the chair or vice chair, so that way you have somebody available, or the voting process is as done. But we shouldn't be as a staff making decisions for you folks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if I could continue, Commissioner Branch, I apologize. I did want to bring up the two items that I brought forth. One of them was that there was a significant amount of anti-Semitic signs that were placed at the entrance and exit ways of the 805, the 54 freeway, and the 5 freeway. They were put directly where vehicles exited in a way and fashion that made it impossible for people to be able to stop and remove the signs. They were rather large. I sent pictures over to Courtney, to Chair Powell Martinez Montez. I believe I sent some to Anne, and I sent them to the Chief of Police so that there would be a response. But it was my recommendation as the commission to write a letter condemning such actions in our city and to possibly speak to the local synagogue so that they too can get together with it. I did speak to Commissioner Felix about it and he did agree and said to go ahead and utilize his name when I spoke about it before the commission. The second thing I wanted to bring up, it's a little late now, but I did want to bring it up. The reason there was such a need to get it on the agenda quickly was that I put forth a request for LGBTQ, specifically trans youth swim time in the city of Chula Vista, setting aside some special, like a 2-hour block time for specifically for LGBTQ youth, for allies, and for trans youth, because it has been noted that especially LGBTQ youth, with just the usage of one event or just a approving adult, it can reduce their suicide rates by up to 40%. So I presented that as a plan to the city and I just got approval today. So I'm very excited about that. I just wanted the HRC to be a supporter of that. It's all going to be privatized, so it's not actually through the city, just so everybody knows it's not something the city's setting aside. We are purchasing the time through people that have donated. So if the HRC wants to bring that up at the next meeting and be an endorser and supporter, that'd be great.
So is that an item, the 2 items about the signs and the swim time, is that something that people will want to be on the agenda for the next meeting?
I don't. I have well, I don't know about the letter that Commissioner Kina you mentioned. I don't know if if we wait a whole other month till it gets brought up to the agenda is a long time. Is there any way to make a request to someone to do a letter of this nature? To condemn these anti-Semitic incidents in the city?
It has to be an agendized item for you to take action.
Okay.
And the letter would be, I'm sorry, may I miss some? The letter would be to who?
Well, Commissioner Kina, you want to mention, I mean, some kind of comment from the city, right? To condemn the acts of racism, the anti-Semitism?
Yes, it would be from the HRC to request the city to note and condemn these acts of anti-Semitic.
Okay.
All over the city.
Any other comments? Well, so I guess any other comments about putting that on the agenda, those 2 items on the agenda for next meeting? I guess I need a sense, yes, no. Commissioner Medina?
You know what? I just want to say this is that I respect my colleagues here, the commissioners here, and I feel that if somebody brings something up in their commissioner comments and is asking to put things on the agenda, I would like to see those things agendized.
Agreed.
That sounds like an appropriate way to move forward. So I'll then ask if the city staff could put those 2 items on the agenda for the next meeting. Are there any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Lake?
Thank you. At the last meeting, I brought up the AAPI work that we were doing, and there was an attempt a very late attempt by myself to have an ad hoc committee meeting. We were not able to meet due to the schedules. So my hope is by the next meeting to have another ad hoc meeting and have something to talk about with the group in general. So I would ask that that also be part of the agenda for next term.
Okay.
And I apologize for not moving forward on it.
So can I clarify here? So there's an ad hoc that's going to come back. You'd like that on the agenda, Commissioner Lake? Okay, thank you.
Are there any other commissioner comments?
I do have a couple, Commissioner
Okay,
Branch.
all right.
I want to start by saying thank you, Commissioner Branch, Vice Chair, for stepping into this role, as far as chairing these spaces, at the last minute, right, finding it out, and I just want to appreciate you real quick for that. I do want to ask question of staff. Are we coming back in person? And is that potentially, could that potentially happen for June? Is that in the game plan, or are we going to continue virtual?
So thank you for reminding me of my third item I was going to share with you all. We just are hearing from the city clerk. So here we are looking at the options for the commissions. Yes, as you know, it's the governor's order emergency order that allows us to meet in this fashion virtually. That's why there's all that language and the scripts for how we conduct these meetings. And so we will be working, the city clerk met with the city manager, and the city clerk's team is going to contact the chairs of the various commissions to get their input on when to move forward with coming back in person, because eventually we're all going to be back in person. But and it potentially could be as soon as July. I do know that. Wait, this is June. Yes, so the fourth Thursday in July. So yes, so the city clerk's going to start working with the commissions. We know, actually, strangely, interestingly, some of our commissions, the ones that don't meet as often, had trouble getting quorums, like when they came around for their quarterly meetings. So they've actually been more successful getting their quorum to meet virtually. But we're not going to have, so commissions will be able to continue virtually or come back in person. It's not going to be, oh, well, 1 month we'll let you know how we want to do it. So that's what's coming forward. The city clerk's working on a process to work with the commission chairs to do what the way the commissioners want to do it. Right now, the order is in effect through September, and we have not heard one way or another when it's going to be rescinded. And the governor's office has said that the cities or jurisdictions would have an opportunity to have some time to put that in place. He wouldn't say starting right now, everybody has to come back live, because every city and jurisdiction is different. So
perfect.
Can we get, since our chair isn't, oh, sorry. Commissioner Menini, did you have something else?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I have two other things that are, I got the answer that I was looking for, and thank you very much. But I do have two other things. One is I would like to see something agendized for next time we meet. And it's specific to communications, and it's just process. And so we have received public comment, I would say more than once, and I'm really appreciative of the public comment we get from one of our community members who is always engaged and continues to just stay in this process. I really appreciate her, but she's asked for some things to happen in regards to public communication, and as far as just putting some things in the minutes. She's also asked, there's an email. And so what I would like for us to do is to agendize that, to be able to have an opportunity to potentially have conversation around those asks that she's detailed in the email. So I would just say a simple public communication, public comment process to be on our agenda as well. And then the other thing that I wanted to put in is that I know that we were discussing at the meeting in the past, or at a meeting in the past, this conversation with the HRC being an oversight space for the ALPR and for, I know that it's not that language, but the Chula Vista Police Department will come and provide some quarterly updates. And so my question is that if that quarterly report is going to happen soon, in order to prep our HRC, I was hoping to see the community. There's a community. They're using the words ad hoc, a community ad hoc that has been very concerned about ALPR. I'd like for them to have an opportunity to share their presentation at the HRC so that we have some opportunities to just hear what their content is that they're sharing in concerns of ALPR, so that when the Chula Vista Police Department does present, we have that, I think that we're lensed up and we have that capacity. So, and I'm not sure when that CVPD update will be, but what I'm asking for is before that session to be able to have our HRC to have a presentation from community that have that are more specific to challenging the ALPR. So I don't know where that fits in an agenda item or anything, but I just wanted to make sure that we have those opportunities as well in future HRC meetings.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So I'm clear. You're requesting that we agendize this community presentation at
Correct.
some time in the future?
Sometime in the future, and so like for an example, if we were to find out that CVPD is coming at September, maybe we could do it in August, right? But so it just depends on when CVPD is being scheduled to come in to provide their update. Not to do it on the same night, but to do it in a
Okay.
Okay. I'll make a note of that. I just want to ask, just going back to the in-person meeting issue. You said the city clerk is going to talk to the chairs. Our chair isn't here tonight, so I don't know what her thoughts are about us being in person. So I just wanted to quickly ask if any commissioners had any thoughts about when we would come back in person. I mean, I don't know if anyone had any reservations or anything that or eager to come back as fast as we can. Just any thoughts that I could share with our chair as she's talking to the city clerk?
I'm ready.
Okay, we got one. I'm ready. Okay, got another thumbs up. Couple. Commissioner Kinayub, did you want to say something? Commissioner Kinayub, was that just a?
I just want to say that I prefer to stay home. I just don't fit in my pants right now, so staying home just works out better for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll share those comments with our chair.
Yeah, I'm ready. I mean, I do prefer not having to drive, especially when it goes late at night or anything like this. So I don't mind doing the virtual ones, but I mean, I am ready. I feel safe and fully vaccinated and, feel pretty safe to resume normality, but it is easier to do it from home.
Yes, there definitely is a convenience factor there. Okay, with that, I think, hopefully I didn't miss anyone else's hands or comments. Okay. So at this time, it's time to adjourn this meeting.
I see Commissioner Kinayub's hand. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss? Okay.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Branch. I just had one more thing to agendize for the next time.
Oh, okay.
The South Bay Pride is progressing on August 21st. So that leaves only our July meeting to vote if we're going to participate and who wants to volunteer for it. So I just wanted to bring that up for the next meeting.
Okay. So we'll add that onto the agenda for the next meeting. All right. So with that, just make sure I'm not missing anybody here. I'll move for adjournment here. So it is 8:41 p.m. and I am adjourning this meeting to the next regular meeting of the Human Relations Commission on July 22nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. via teleconference.
Bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.